of them as well. What a move from the 48. Oh, look at this, and onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
Well, 2 rounds down, and we reach round 3 here at Watkins Glen. And at the end of this, we'll be at the halfway point of the season of the Abruzzi Prototype Challenge Championship from Motorsport UK Esports. It's been an exciting first couple of rounds of the championship. And of course, we come to a ever famous race course. We were just here last week with the 6 hours, and now we are going once more here with some prototype racing. You've got the GTPs and of course the LMP3s as well, all working their way through a 1-hour race. It's myself, Cam Roger, and Dareth Thacker alongside me, and Hugo Louise on the production of this RaceSpotTV broadcast. It's going to be a lot of fun, I'm sure, with the 4 classes. But here is the schedule that we've had. So we started at Spa, we went to the Algarve, so a couple of European races to kick off the season. But now we go to a couple of flyaways. We got Watkins Glen, then Suzuka, before returning to Europe with Imola, and of course the Silverstone 300 kilometers, so a bit of a longer race. And when we get towards the end of July, and the races are basically every single week apart from a little break before Silverstone. So it's a very compact, a very congested season, and you need to be getting those points on the doors, early doors, I should say, in the championship. But it's just one of those situations when drivers do get some penalties, and there were quite a few after Spa, and once again after Algarve there was some more. And here is how we stand. Tsuruta, who actually came across the line in first place back at Algarve, actually got a penalty and has ended up into 3rd place. So Solveig, who won that race, jumped up into 4th place, so he eventually won that race. What a charge it was for him, finishing 2nd, but actually got the win after the penalties. But look how close it is, just 1 point between Tsuruta and Ben Ford at the front, and just a handful of points further back to Ramadan as well. That championship, I think, is going to go down to the wire. That is the Lmdh Pro category. Of course, we have each of the prototype classes is separated into Pro and Am, the Pros being governed by all the drivers above 3K I rating. Maltrek leads by 2 points in the Lmdh Am category from Luca Munro, your winner from that first race. And of course, we got a very close battle behind with Grevson and Zonta before the points do spread out just a little bit. So it's turning into a little bit of a 3-4 horse race up towards the front. And of course, Maltrek won that previous race as well. Back at Algarve, so he's taken the championship lead with that. Munro struggling quite a bit actually in the hot conditions that we had back at the Algarve. But then of course we have the LMP3s. Now this is an interesting one because in the Pro category, Sikorsky and Barford have been moved to the Pro category. I mentioned earlier, Pro is all the drivers above 3K I rating. However, Sikorsky, Barford, despite being below that, basically got 1 and 2 overall in the LMPs despite being the AM drivers. They have been moved up, and that gives Sikorsky a nice advantage, 13 points over Madel, and then Barford is going to be sitting there in 3rd place after having some big struggles towards the end of the Algarve race. But that mid-pack with Newton, Silva and Walker very tight indeed. And this opens the door to some new drivers in the AM category of the LMP3s, because 2 drivers missing puts Bosworth up the front with Mikey Story in 2nd place. Jenna as well very close in behind, but look at that once again. Crawford, Budd tied on points, Taran and Hill, and then also Hewlett and Fremont, all 3 of of those pairings tied on points. So as we get to the halfway point in the in the calendar, it is certainly going to be a lot of fun to work out who is going to be coming out on top in these championships, as this racing never stops and the drivers have to keep on pushing. It is very highly congested in this championship, and we'll bring in Darethak as we get into the qualifying session. Of course, you are on the Rookie Cup as well, coming over to the Prototype Challenge. It's going to be a lot of fun here at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, and I think Watkins Glen is a circuit as well that works so well for this kind of racing. You know, we have the LMP3s and the hypercars that will work really well in terms of the lapping that we'll see over the course of the race. But qualifying, I think, is going to be relatively important. Getting that confidence in early is going to be key, and particularly at this stage of the championship, you want to get those points on the board, position yourself well for your own championship aspirations. And in the early couple of races, drivers that have performed well, looking to try and hold on to those leads, and those that are looking to catch up have a lot of work to do, and that starts in this kind of qualifying session.
Indeed, and of course we use the full Watkins Glen track here as we come through the boots section, as we look on board with Guadio. And the GTBs, as ever, they have a varied lap time in the opening lap because of the cold tyre situation. You have to do a lap to warm them up, so it'll be the second lap where we see the faster times coming in. So don't worry that Sikorsky is basically doing the same times in LMP3 as we got the Ferrari of Grivson there, and even Baston and the Ferrari is actually mixed in with the LMP3s for now, but don't worry about that. When the second laps come in, we will see the times getting a lot faster. It is Alfie Price leading the way at this moment in time. He's a pro driver. Nick Scott there is your lead AM driver for the Lmdhs. You'll see a slight colour change in the yellow, but it's actually Luca Munro who there jumps up to the front. Of course, your race winner from round one.
Yeah, and immediately then offset by Ethan Marone and then Ben Ford as all the lap times are starting to come in. There's Kostek in the 222 going up to the top 3 as well. So many lap times coming in. Joe Coffin improving towards front. Alfie Price. It's one I think we're just going to have to keep an eye on. It's just going to be consistently moving throughout the rest of this qualifying session. Lots of drivers are still setting lap times in, but for Francesco Zonta to pop it up there into P4 to lead the class, that's a fantastic lap time for him on the first meaningful lap.
Yeah, definitely some big improvements. It's pretty crazy actually how those cold tyres is literally 3-4 seconds, sometimes really so slow. And it was very interesting actually back at the 6 hour watching the overcut undercut situations. Drivers, they would literally come out 5 seconds ahead of someone, but then after the first lap they'd be caught up with those cold tyres. As we look to the LMP3s, Callum Newton is here coming through in towards the end of the boot section as it stands, and he's obviously in that number 72 trying to work his way up the field in the LMP3. Sikorsky is leading the way as you would expect. Pedro Silva and Barford there up towards the front of the LMP3s. Newton is actually yet to set a lap, so he hasn't got that much longer. He will have another go after this one.
Let's see, is there any kind of chance for an improvement? We'll have to wait and find out. Coming in towards the final corner now. Looking to try and put himself into a decent place in the timing tab, but of course difficult in the early stages of the session. LMP3 Pro, so of course will be hoping to move himself in front of some of the AMs and make sure that he is fighting in and amongst the rest of his class. But I believe he went P2 in class there. Good lap time in the end. Ethan Marone's been black flagged, not what he needed. He sits P2 in the LMDH Pro class, but Alfie Price looking to offset that as he comes across the line. Is he able to do so? Doesn't look like he is, and will stay in P3, but those gaps towards the front, not very big at all. 3/10 in the top 3. That shows that this is going to be, I think, quite a tight race.
Yeah, and here is Barford. This is quite an interesting situation for him because he is currently their 3rd place in the stand, well, 2nd place, as he's still being dictated as an AM driver on the timing tower, but he is 3rd place overall in the LMP3s, and he will contest in that pro category for the points a bit later on in the race. Oh, goes way too wide, knocks into the wall, and every bit of time that he gained across the lap is lost there in that final corner. 2.5 minutes to go, but he's not on the lap, so he will have to retire the car from the session. Interesting, you mentioned earlier, Dara Marone getting that black flag. That means he'll, of course, no longer be able to improve from that 2nd place. So Ben Ford looking good to get another pole position, as he did in Spa. His Cav Bud as well, working his way through the Sector 3 of this lap. And he is a driver who's currently down in 8th place in the category, a couple of seconds off. So I'm sure he'll be improving on this next lap as he gets his tyres a little bit further up. Madel there gets up into 4th place in the LMP3 Pros.
He does. It is getting quite close at this stage. You know, this is really where we're going to see the final runs. If you're not crossing the line in the next 20 seconds or so, this is going to be the final lap that you're able to complete. Of course, when the timer hits 0 in these sessions, that is session over. You don't get to complete the lap you're currently on. So drivers having to get to the line soon if they want to get this and one more in. Cav Buck, one of those drivers who may be able to get a second lap in. It's going to be tight for him, though, of course, in that LMP3 class. In fact, he won't be able to. This is his final run. Is there any jump from P8 in his own class? We'll have to wait and see until the timing page updates. And it is up to P4. Good improvement, a few tenths of a second, and that not just doesn't just get him ahead of some of his own class. It gets him ahead of some of the pro drivers as well, but he's going to do really well for himself.
And here's Saruta, who, of course, won the race on the road last week. Got the penalty, finished in 3rd place in the end. So I'm sure he would still be happy with his performance, though, because he was by far the fastest Lmdh pro driver last time round. So this time needs to obviously avoid getting penalties to keep that win. And he's currently down in 6th place in class, 9th overall, as he goes really wide to try and get every bit of speed as he can with just 3 corners remaining. He does need to improve, because whilst he is obviously, you know, in a decent position of 6th, he's going to have a lot of AM drivers in the way. So he needs at least needs to get in front of those AM drivers. One final corner to go, 30 seconds remaining. This is his final lap of the session. As we come out the final corner, brushes up against the wall but doesn't hit it, and up towards the line. Can he get an improvement from that 6th place? It should be good enough. No, it isn't, as he stays there in 6th, and that is a big shame for him. 8 tenths off after being so dominant in pace in the Algarve, and it looks like Ben Ford is going to take pole position in your Lmdh Pro category as well. So very interesting grid that we have here, with a mixture of the Pro and the AM drivers. Max Spooner, actually, in the Lmdh AM drivers, didn't set a time on his lap with the hot tyres, so he was 6 seconds off, and actually he's mixed in with the LMP3s in the timing situation. So definitely an interesting one with how the tyres work here. Of course, we've got an hour race coming your way, where we will have a 75% fuel tank. So there will be a pit stop around 25 to 35 minutes into the race. Here's your grid. Ben Ford is on the front row with Marone, and then we have Price, Zonta, Solivay and Coffin on your 3rd row, rounding out to your top 6. Munro is there with Grevson on your 4th row, Zaruta, Madtrek, Rallio and Hobbs inside your top 12. Nick Scott, then we have Simpkin, Basson, and then we get to the LMP3. Sikorsky got the pole with Silver and Barford there in your front 3 drivers, before we have Newton, Walker, Jenner, Max Spooner, Cav Budd, Jensen, Bosworth inside your top 12 rows. Then Story, Maddell, Fremont, Hewlett, Cheverton and Ash Hill rounding out to your top 30. And the final driver on the grid is Cam Judd in the 52 machine at the back of the field. But of course, he'll be looking to move forward as we get onto the formation lap. So Dara, as I mentioned, we've got 75% tank. So generally the pit stop window is about 25 to 35 minutes in the race. But the big question now with the cold tyres is, do you want to go longer and stay out, or do you want to pit a bit earlier, trying to get some track position? However, you will be on the colder tyres when everyone else is on the hot ones.
It's difficult, isn't it, really, to nail this kind of strategy discussion when it has been thrown a little bit more up in the air of late with the update in the model. So it's difficult to really judge exactly how well to play this, and traffic will play a part as well. You know, I think we've seen it in quite a few prototype championships now, not just this season, but in seasons gone by, that however you play the traffic with the strategy can really help you throughout the rest of the race. And so I think a lot of the drivers towards the front, particularly Ben Ford, are going to be wary of that. If you can get the launch away, at least get yourself into the front group, maybe not necessarily into the lead, but into that front group of cars, being able to manage that traffic and then manage how you want to play out the strategy. Do you pit early, do you pit later? How you manage that fuel tank as well can be so crucial. So I think in the early stages, we may see a little bit of chaos with drivers trying to find where they are going to be racing with each other, who they're going to be racing with. And then in that middle phase where we see a bit of conservation, a bit of management, it's going to be interesting to see which drivers are able to really pull out a bit of a gap during that stage.
And by the way, that 190 livery of Alfie Price is absolutely crazy. Just splattered paint everywhere. Definitely love that one, and very easy to see. As you see the drivers trying to get at least some warmth into those tyres. It's very slippery. The lap 1 in Spa, and especially the first couple laps in Algarve, was absolute carnage. So let's see if we can get a little bit of a cleaner race going as the pace car comes in. The drivers line themselves up to get round 3 of the season underway. It's the Abruzzi Prototype Challenge Championship from MS UK Esports. We've got drivers already coming down pit road as the green flag flies and Bedford gets us underway. Zonta's already got a penalty. We're 4 wide coming down in towards the first corner. Let's sort this one out as the LMP3s are already racing as they hit the green flag before the final corner, and up the hill we come. Out onto the back straight. Looks like it's a clean start for the GTBs.
Yeah, Benford, I think this is about going to hold on from Alfie Price. Price is going to have that slipstream all the way down into the bus stop chicane. Munro lost the position in towards turn number 1, and Price looking to go from 3rd to 1st. Going to have to overtake a fellow BMW to take the lead, but he's going to go for it. Outside line, not going to work. Defended well by Ben Ford. And then the LMP3 is a bit of a similar story for Franek Sikorsky in his quest to try and hold on to the lead, but it seems that the pole sitters have got away relatively well in the early stages, but really, really dramatic to see some of the LMDHs coming off the line.
Yeah, very interesting one. Of course, we've got a couple of penalties out there. Oh, there we go. Is that Sikorsky from the lead of the LP3's terrible rejoin? All the drivers avoiding him, but the bodywork flying around. And that is very big for the championship. Your number 46, of course, so strong in the opening couple of races. He's got the meatball flag, and that is going to change the course of this championship after him moving to the pro category.
Yeah, difficult for Franek Sikorsky, a driver who has so much pace, particularly in these MS UK championships, but can often come a cropper to a couple of these big hits, which, you know, ruin your race right from the start. And he's not the only one who's going to have a meatball flag. The 999 of James Fremont is going to have to come down pit lane as well, but really dramatic for him. Gift really for Ethan Barford, and now Pedro Silva into P1 and P2, as we see a bit of a wide moment there for Ethan Marone in the P3 spot in the Lmdh Pro class. But yeah, dramatic off the line. It wouldn't really be Watkins Glen without it, would it?
Absolutely not. I think the blue LMP3 was Ash Hill as well, who's had some problems. We've already got Zonta down the road after his end-of-line penalty at the beginning, having some problems at the start. Max Spooner as well got a penalty, so he's down the back. So what a crazy opening lap once again. Can never seem to get a clean one in this championship. We do have 3 more races to go after this one, though, as we look at Suruta, who has got himself up. So all the pro cars in LMDH have got past the AM, so the top 6 on the road are all pro cars. As is this Sikorsky, why isn't he towed back to the pit lane? I mean, his car is absolutely broken, and I know it's a little bit quicker if you can try and get back, but still very dangerous to stay out there. And finally he does come back through, so this opens the door for Ethan Barford or Pedro Silva to get a race victory in that class, and that is going to be very, very helpful for them in terms of points, because even if Sikorsky gets back out on track, he's not going to be scoring any big points today.
No, and I think the gap that Barford's built up ahead of Pedro Silva is going to be giving him quite a bit of confidence already, pretty much at a full second. This is what happened, though, on the opening lap, bouncing over that curb, hitting into the wall, and nothing he can really do about the rejoin. There's a bit of a slide, maybe could have held the brake, but that's a horrible place to be stuck, isn't it?
That green car on the outside of him, that is mental at a corner like that. And to be fair, yeah, not much more Sikorsky could have done, and in the end it actually worked out all right, but certainly tricky stuff. Way too much curb. I mean, he's a car width to the left, too much curb there, and somehow, oh, that white car as well, just avoiding him. Very, very brave driving from those drivers and skillful driving to avoid some big contact there. That's certainly very interesting. So this is Ash Hill as well, I believe, coming down. So let's open up the boot, just losing the rear end. Just losing the rear end, seemingly on his own. All drivers further, that must be Fremont there, who got the damage, hit from behind, but it was Ash Hill who was the ultimate cause of that.
Yeah, and Ash Hill feeling the full effect of number 19 in the barrier, and not exactly where he'd want to be. Luca Monroe has just gone to the lead in the LMDH and category. He's overtaken Nick Scott down in towards the bus stop chicane, and that's the 56 into the lead of the race. Now let's see if he can drive off to the distance, or whether Nick's going to be able to come back at him.
Lovely driving by Luca. The move that he made at Spa to get the race win was absolutely gorgeous. A couple of places there. Goes a bit deep though, Nick Scott in the multicoloured machine, trying to get back past him, but not able to do so just yet. And there is a little bit of a gap forming there between Munro and Joe Coffin, who's on the back of the pro category. But nevertheless, let's see the move Is it going to be left? Is it going to be right? It is going to be to the left-hand side, so I believe that's going to be the outside coming in towards the inner loop. What a move there by Luca Munro. He's been so aggressive this season and completes another move to retake the race lead.
Yeah, full commitment, wasn't it, in towards the corner. Didn't really look like he was going to be able to make that work, and normally you wouldn't necessarily try it all the way around the outside, but absolutely incredible to get it done, and has built up that gap immediately. Full second between himself and Nick Scott. Ryan Walker battling his way to P2 in that LMP3 Pro class, with Pedro Silva dropping to 4th. All of the battling allowing Ethan Barfoot a 5-second margin at the front. I mean, when we're 5 minutes into the race, that's a decent margin to have, isn't it?
Look at the steering angle on Pedro Silva's car here. That is quite some damage, and he's coming down into pit road. Unsurprisingly, with that one, I mean, that was a good almost 45 degrees, so definitely enough, and that front right corner is crunched on his LMP3, so unfortunately he's going to be losing out. So Barfoot is going to be looking nice to get a race victory. He's got a 5-second lead from Ryan Walker now, who's in that second place, but the fights continue on further back in the LMP3 category. This is Mikey's story, as in the 4th place in the AM category, as he's obviously trying to get involved with the drivers ahead of him. He's got Bosworth, and then he's got Bud, and even he's got Mado in the pro category to the outside. Can he try and redo what Luca Munro did a couple of laps ago? No, he can't. Has to fall back in line.
Yeah, it's just going to be so tricky, isn't it, to make a move in the same way that Luca Munro was able to do just a couple of laps ago into the bus stop. I doubt we're going to see many more successful attempts around the outside, if I'm honest, over the course of this race. Mikey Story is keeping this battle very honest, though, and it's good to see that we have a decent leading battle in the LMP3M class. The top 4 by less than 3 seconds. It is very congested down here, and Cav Bud just about being able to keep himself away from these two, but for how much longer remains to be seen. But yeah, great to see that these guys are battling, but all 4 leaders across the board able to build up that gap, and I think that's going to be so critical for their strategies, because being able to be more managing in terms of that opening stint and not having too much pressure behind can be so helpful, which is often a downside of leading a race like this. But for all 4 leaders, they've not got that problem to worry about right now.
Yeah, they're all fairly comfortable for now. We won't rest on our laurels, though, considering how crazy this championship has been in the opening sequence of the race. This is back to Nick Scott, and look at the time that he's lost to Luca Munro as well, 2 seconds. So Luca really is on it this season in that caddy, as he pulls away, tries to keep up with the pro drivers. He did, of course, win the championship last season, getting a couple of wins on the way to that. He's already got 1 to his name this season. Let's see if he can get another one, as I think Simpkin from the Lmdh AM category has had some issues. Yeah, he's got the meatball, and he is going to have to go back to the pit lane. So must have had a big crash somewhere, dropping back behind a load of the LMP3s.
Yeah, not what he needed at all, is it? And let's see if this is the moment through the bus stop chicane. Is it similar to what we saw from Frank Sikorsky? Yeah, just hits the side into the wall rather than the rear end, and stops off the row, which is less of a problem. And I guess there was no one else coming through anyway. Not quite the entire field as it was for Frank Sikorsky on the race start of the lead in the LMP3s. But still, similar mistakes, and mistakes that we've seen before here at Watkins Glen. They are very much concerns you have to take at this circuit. Such a tricky place to really thread the needle, because it's a high-speed circuit, but dangers everywhere.
And another one drops out. Hewlett gets the meatball as well. So tricky opening 8 minutes here. Apparently at Watkins Glen, drivers still settling into a rhythm around this Watkins Glen track. Doesn't matter how much driving you do for the 6 hours last week. Definitely catches you out if you make some mistakes around here. And it seems like that sequence up towards the bus stop and the inner loop. Let's see what happens though here for Nick Scott as he tries to defend on that inside line. Didn't work last time with Munro, but looks like he's been able to hold on that time around. And of course the white machine is Maltrek. That is your championship leader in the AM category, trying to work his way through.
Yeah, let's see if he's going to be able to make sure that he can stay nice and clear of some of the cars that he is not really fighting in terms of overall positioning class, at least I should say. So difficult for him to find a way through. But of course, in this battle with the 3 AMs leading the way, I think for Nick Scott, the fact that he's been overtaken by Luca Monroe and he is now struggling to keep up means that for Malczarek, it's critical to try and get past soon. Ooh, not quite that soon, I didn't think, to the inside line, but he's going to have to try and find the right line, the right way to make this move work. And you can see Nick Scott already throwing defensive lines into corners where you wouldn't necessarily think that a move could be possible. And once you're starting to do that, it really feels like you're driving far too much when you realize he may find himself under too much pressure. And we might see a move relatively soon, but for Malczarek, he's got to get it done. He can't just wait for the mistake, because it's not necessarily going to come from a driver sitting in P2.
Yeah, definitely not, but Nick Scott's certainly a cork in the bottle here. He's got a few drivers lining up behind him, because of course he got Grevson as well as Gualio just behind. So any small mistake here, any off tracks come in and they will be losing positions. Let's see once again if the white Porsche of Malczarek can get the run as we come up the hill, trying to get the slipstream. It's a long straightaway up towards the chicane, but not enough that time around. So Scott knows where to put his car to make these defensive moves. Or that's a bit of a mistake, though. Has a bit of a bobble through the mid part of that chicane, but holds on to it.
Yeah, not going to be able to lose it, or not, I say being able to, doesn't want to, of course, lose it through there, but keeps hold of that rear end and continues onwards here. Yeah, I mean, this battle is just getting almost wider and wider in terms of the possibilities here, with the fact that Nick Scott is almost dragging in the likes of Stephen Hobbs, even down in P6, into this battle for second place. Only a couple of seconds, and you can see them all on the screen there, actually, as they run their way through in this ever-tightening battle. A couple of pro drivers between Nick Scott and Luca Monroe as well, which won't be helping anybody who tries to escape and try and catch up to the race leader in the class. But yeah, still holding firm as Nick Scott. And how long do you wait, I think, is the question for some of these guys, before you stop trying to make the move and start managing your tyres and your fuel before that pit stop?
The pit stop, I think, is going to be the biggest talking point of this race in terms of the overall result, because the battles that are this close, I mean, you could easily, at least 5 seconds, if not more, you can gain or lose from your pit stop. So these battles can swap around so easily indeed. So that's going to be a big point in the race. We're still about at least 12 minutes away from that as they come through some LMP3 traffic up the hill as we're on board with the Ferrari Grevson, looking at that battle for second place in class. Malczarek going to the left-hand side. There's a bit of traffic on the outside, so Scott should be able to hold on to that one, but that's going to get very difficult indeed. Oh, Scott goes wide, opens up the door. This could be a double move from Grevson around the outside. Contact is made. He goes onto the grass. Malczarek just nudges him to the left-hand side as he tries to hold onto the car himself, as Ash Hill's having a few problems, but somehow they stay in the same order, but that could change around very quickly.
Oh yeah, inside line move, maybe not quite, as they work their way in towards the boot part of the lap, but I can't believe they stayed in the same positions after all of that. Grevson just about holding on to P4 when it looked like he was going to be second or third, maybe even fifth or sixth, depending on how far wide he went. Managed to find himself in the same spot that he left the circuit in originally, but now it's the case for Malczarek to maybe go for the move. Not going to make it work down the inside in towards the heel, but yeah, clearly looking for the move. And for Nick Scott, trying to fight his way through a little bit of pro traffic, not going to help him out too much. If he's offline, it's going to give the opportunity to the car behind.
Oh, and look at this up the inside of LMP3 traffic. So difficult to get through the traffic when you're having a battle for position. That's actually helped him so much, because Malczarek gets stuck behind and is not able to get through, as obviously the drivers further behind that sit in and just watch on as the LMP3s start to be lapped here. Opens up the doors. Gualio sends it down the inside, at least thinks about it. Can't quite do that. There's Grevson in the blue machine up ahead of him, and it's getting very tight indeed. It's quite an open track sometimes, but if you catch an LMP3 at the wrong point, you can definitely swap the positions around. Is that into the wall? That might have been Scott into the wall. And then LMP3 was involved as well. I saw Scott having a bit of a wiggle. Maybe it was actually an LMP3 that he hit, not the wall, but around goes. Trying to see which car it is. That's the number 52 machine. And unfortunately, that is Cam Judd, who started the back, was having a solid race there in P6 in class, but he's now going to be out of this race.
Yeah, let's have a look at what happened. Oh, he just drives a little bit too far into the wall, and that unsettles the car. And then the walls are so tight through that part of the circuit that it's difficult to avoid them. And it isn't even a big hit, really, all things considered, for Cameron Judd into the wall, but enough to put him a long way further down the order, and unfortunate really for him, but he should be able to get back into this race. Those damages are not going to be beyond repair by any stretch of the imagination, but still unfortunate. But again, dangers of the circuit at Watkins Glen. It's a very wide circuit generally. We often see cars go very wide through some of the corners just to get the fastest line through, but then you get in towards turns 2 and 3, and all of a sudden the walls are right there on one of the fastest parts of the circuit. So easy to make a mistake like that.
And Nick Scott is really struggling here, to be honest. The pace has dropped off. They're now over 7 seconds behind Munro. Remember, Munro made that move for the lead, but unfortunately, Scott hasn't been able to hold on to that one, as I think coming out of the pit lane, they got Ashio, the LMP3, who I think got a black flag. Cheverton from the LMP3s has also had a repair. A Meatball, he's going to have to go back, as we're going to see how this happened. All in his own, up through the third apex it was. Oh, big hit into the wall. After that third apex, just a little wiggle, couldn't save it, went hard left into the wall. And that car, I mean, even if he does get back to the pit lane, which of course he will with the tow, that is going to be there for a long, long time getting repairs.
Yeah. I mean, you've only got 45 minutes left in this race. It's not really a pleasant sight to have a little bit of repair work needing to be done onto the car and sitting in pit lane and looking and, you know, seeing that time at a far more substantial number than you'd want it to be when you're in a race like this, and particularly at this stage of the season. As we've said, middle stage of the season, you want to get yourself into the best position possible towards the end of the race, or end of the season, I should say, but having some repairs is not going to help, and the same has to be said for the 999 now.
As there's James Fremont. Did he not have a meatball earlier in the race?
He did. 15
minutes in, and he's got his second one. Maybe he's a bit hungry tonight. Unfortunately, that is really not how the race of the number 999 would have wanted to go. Going back down pit road once again. So Zonta is 3 laps down. He obviously had some issues on the, I think it was the opening lap. He's back out there on the track. Simpkins seems to be DNF from the race. We'll have to see if some other drivers rejoin. There is a couple down pit road getting some repairs as it stands with 43 minutes to go. We haven't spoken about them so much, but in your Lmdh Pro category, Ben Ford is leading, but we focus on the battles lower down because this has been exciting stuff as we work our way up the hill. Gualio in that yellow machine trying to get past Grevson, goes all the way towards the barrier to try and get the run, but now he's on the slipstream. Also up ahead, Nick Scott is trying to defend. Maltrek trying to get to second place around the outside. He's made it stick as well. So that's second place for your championship leader. Scott loses another position, and let's see if he can hold on to that white machine, as he could not to Luca Monroe.
No, and there goes Maltrek. Can he get up the road? That's the critical factor here. Nick Scott knows that he can't afford for the Porsche to get too far away here in this battle. Needs to try his best to keep close and keep himself in this conversation for P2. He was, or has been, the cork in the bottle somewhat for that entire train, from second down to 6th at times. But now with Maltrek free, how he plays this is going to be interesting as well. Of course, getting the move done. How does he manage the fuel? How does he manage the tyres? That's going to be key. But a good move, outside line, committed, didn't have to do it in the same way that Munro did, but still, second time now that Nick Scott's been done around the outside at the bus stop.
I mean, the outside is not, I would say, the usual overtaking position there, but Scott maybe not quite confident enough today after having, as you say, been overtaken twice in the same manner. It's a tricky corner on your own, let alone trying to go side by side, so maybe he was half backing out of it. Or, you know, half sort of not really fighting it in both situations. But that leaves Maltrek second place. He's already caught down over half a second to Munro since getting that second place, so you never know if that's going to work. Gualio in the background in that yellow car is getting very close, actually, as they come up. He was almost too close. He's not going to get enough slipstream as he come onto the back straight. He's almost pushing Grevson as we come down in towards the bus stop once again. Can he get himself close enough? No, he can't. So Grevson getting the exit that he needs off the hill. But as I said, I think Gualio is actually just a little bit too close to get the slipstream, because you have to be a few car lengths back. So by the time you reach them, you have 5-10Ks over speed. If you're sat right on their gearbox, you don't get this really any benefit of the slipstream, and you're just going the same speed as them.
Yeah, and I think, all of this, equals up into lots of problems in the drivers' minds when they have to consider some of these battles. And when you get to this level as well, there is so much you have to consider. It's not as easy as just, sticking it down the inside, trying to make the move work for yourself. Of course, drivers around you very, very quick in their own regard and have I ratings that are very respectable, particularly in some of these pro classes, and are to be very much respected throughout the race. But also an hour-long race is slightly longer than I think a lot of the races that some of these drivers will do. Generally, a lot of races, 30 minutes, 40 minutes maybe, 45 minutes even. So this 1 hour race means you need a little bit more formulation in how you work out your race. That pit stop length being a little bit longer. Of course, sometimes if you're running a 30, 40 minute race in these cars, you won't have to think about a pit stop. So there's lots of different things to consider, and can be somewhat difficult to factor in everything as you go through, and being able to build up a bit of a gap wherever you are in the field and give yourself a bit of space is really quite key.
So Ben Ford leads the way by now 0.7 of a second. Alfie Price is getting close for second place. The number 1 versus the 190. Ben Ford, who won in Spa by 11 seconds and then had all sorts of issues and got a penalty in Algarve to just add insult to injury to the race that he was clearly struggling with. But today he's back out in front. But it is not going to be easy because Price is staying close. It's ebbed and flowed a little bit, but it's stayed around a second for quite a while now. They've dropped Ethan Barone by a good few seconds, so it is really just a two-car battle, realistically, as they get towards some LMP3 traffic as well, as we go under 40 minutes remaining in the session. In theory, you can pit with about 35 minutes to go. So there may be 2-3 more laps before we start seeing the early pitters. As mentioned before, so there will be some drivers who use up the full tank and go to about 25 minutes or so remaining in the race. There's about 10 or 15 minute window in the middle where they are going to be making their pit stops as Mikey Story continues his battle for 4th position in class, with Bosworth just up ahead.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you have that narrow window because drivers only have almost a short period of time to really play games with that strategy, but it all is built up in the opening stages. Mikey Story looking to try and put himself into the podium spots. It would give him a lot more comfort, I think, in terms of his strategy to be able to get into the top 3. They're a long way off the race leader, though, of Jacob Jenner, and they may even be at risk at this kind of pace of being lapped by the overall race leader. 55 seconds back they are at the moment after just 21 minutes of this race, but they won't really mind if they're lapped if they're inside the top 3. And Story is chasing Bosworth towards turn number 1. Not a move I think that's going to be made there. Maybe a bit of a look, get into the wing mirrors, maybe force your opponent wide, but Story keeping calm, and to his credit as well, Bosworth, even though he runs a bit wide, making sure that he's not giving away too much of an opportunity to Mikey Story right now.
Is Story close enough? Ooh, a little bit of a wobble there actually from Bosworth, so Story is getting closer. He goes to the left almost to purposefully not overtake quite on, trying to not get the slipstream, just follow through. So maybe he just wants a little bit of slipstream. The issue for them is there's a huge gap up ahead of them. I mean, that might be correct actually. It's about 40 seconds up ahead apparently. So that is huge in terms of the how much it's spread out in this category as Bosworth goes wide a little bit. So these guys, they don't really gain much if they fight, and they don't really gain much if they don't fight at this moment in time. They're a little bit in no man's land as Madel is dropping down. Oh no, he's just come down the pit lane.
Yeah, he's come down pit lane, but maybe for a stop that is planned, but it does feel very early for that. Maybe for a bit of damage repair. But I think in the next 5-10 minutes, I think is where we're going to see it getting a bit busier, isn't it?
Yeah, this is basically, so these drivers pitting now, they're going to sort of fill up a full tank and then go to the end. Whereas Cam Judd there gets a meatball after having some issues earlier as well. Yeah, so drivers pitting now, they have to go a full tank to the end. Whereas the drivers who go longer, they will use up their full tank now. So you kind of have a long stint and a short stint, and it depends which way around you want to go. Going in the middle, you never really gain from either. Oh, Cam, he is going so slow there in the middle of the track after rejoining, having fixed the car. And then one of the LMDHs just could not get out of the way. He was going he definitely wasn't going full speed here, I would say, at that point. Huge crash there for the GTP.
Yeah, and again, for Judd, same place, I think, isn't it, that he had to spin a few laps ago. So not a nice part of the track for the 52. He's not going to want to see that too many times again. But he will be quite some way down the field now and maybe just be trying to get home to pick up the points for finishing this race. Ben Ford looking for more than just points, isn't he? He's leading the race, and he's pulled out that gap a bit more to Alfie Price. I wonder if that's a sign of him starting to kick on a bit. Of course, he was able to rest on his laurels for a few minutes after leading the race and building up some 3.5 second margin, but now that Price got back within a second, has it really kicked him back into gear and pushed him forward once again? Well, the gap's still bubbling around a second, but again, looking confident. He's got the number 1 on the car for a reason, isn't he?
Certainly has. I believe that GTP, by the way, involved in the crash was Joe Coffin, because he's down pit road with some damage repairs. But as you say, Ford is controlling the race very nicely out the front, and Grevson is also controlling this battle quite well. Gralio is getting close, and once again, he's almost too close as we get towards the stitching. Is he actually going to try and make the move? Yes, he is, to the inside of the inner loop. Backs out of that one, though. He was almost close enough, but I wonder if this is also just to do with the way that the hybrid works between the Acura and the Ferrari, potentially at that point of the straight. I don't know, but either way, he's always getting a good run out of turn 1, turn 2, but then never can quite make it work by the time we get to the inner loop.
Yeah, and we'll still have to try and find a place to make this work. Not into the toe. Horrible place to try and make an overtake through there. The camber doesn't really help you. And of course, the fact that it's quite a fast corner means that it's difficult to stick it up the inside anyway. And then even in towards the hill, you have to be committed, because the wider that you go, or it almost feels like the wider that you go, the better the racing line is through this corner. You can see there, painted out beautifully for us, that the edge of the track isn't really the edge of the track limit. And so going down the inside there can be very difficult to judge, because you don't really know how much room to leave on the outside of the corner for the car going around. So really tricky places to make moves. But when you get towards turn 1, when you get towards the bus stop chicane, you kind of know where you lie, exactly how to formulate some of these overtakes. And we could be seeing one now into turn 1.
Yeah, that's a little bit easier. If you can do it down into turn 1, a bit wide goes Grevson, and Gralio manages to make it stick. He's actually having some problems there, because he's lost a load of time as Grevson in the final and the first corner. Gralio goes up the road, and thank you very much, after struggling for at least 5 laps, if not more, trying to make that overtake. He gets one of the easiest overtakes of his life for position, as the 54s definitely had a couple of issues there. It seems like he is still at full speed, so nothing to worry about necessarily, but just a couple of silly mistakes and he loses the position there. So he's down into 5th place, and finally it is 4th position there as well for Gralio in class. They got 3 seconds up ahead to Nick Scott, as that's wide again. So Grevson, he's definitely, there's something going on there. He's definitely struggling a little bit to make that many mistakes in such a short period of time.
Yeah, it could very much be under pressure shortly from Stephen Hobbs in a sister Ferrari car. With that gap only now at a singular second, that may even come into fruition in the next couple of corners, mind you. Battle for P4 in the Pro class has the 222 versus the 2. Christian Saruta, of course, with a difficult qualifying session, trying to find his way up into the top 4 once again. Only 15 seconds off the leader in this race, and for a P5 driver, that's not bad considering some of the gaps that we see, particularly in that LMP3 group of cars, with the gaps to P5, 1 minute 13, and pretty much a lap as well. So Saruta definitely still in this now, but he's going to have to start making his way through pretty quickly. He'll have a lot of room to drive into once he gets past the 222 if he can, but it's all about how he manages that pace, because otherwise he may have to consign himself to P4 or 5 in this one.
May, because he doesn't seem to have the speed that he had 1 week ago. Callum Newton got the meatball. He's dropping down. I think he was even 3rd place in the LMP3 Pro category at the time. But Newton is having some issues after, I think he had a couple of struggles early in the race as well. But from that potential podium fight battle, he's now dropping down. So a lot of crashes happening, even almost halfway in towards this race. So you've been told it might actually be a tech problem as well, because you can't seem to be able to find a replay of an incident. So it might just be some hardware or software problems, which is such a big shame from him, because that's always the worst way to lose a sim race. If you crash, you crash. You can take that on the chin, but if you're something's out of your control, that is certainly heartbreaking indeed. As these guys need to look out, because there's actually Luca Munro from the AM class in behind. But talking of race leaders, Ben Ford has come down the pit road in that BMW, and let's see what he's going to do. So he's cutting the race almost in half. Let's see how long some other drivers stay out, as there is Saruta, who stays on track as Soloway comes in the pit lane.
Yeah, and I think this is where we're going to start to see quite a few of those scheduled pit stops for the expected one stop in this race. Ben Ford already on his marks. Interesting to see him come in early, of course leading the race on his own for quite some time. And keep an eye on the pit stop time and how long he has to stay in pit lane. If Alfie Price can go a couple of extra laps, if that's possible, he may be able to shorten off the pit stop time by a second or so, which could be enough to get him into the race lead here without having to make a move on the circuit. Ben Ford off of the jacks, lights are flashing, stopped them in the end, 24 dead. And that's going to be the mark that I think the others are going to be looking to see if they can shorten that at all in their own stops.
Yeah, so let's, as you say, use that as a reference. Soloway is in there. He's quite a bit longer, actually. He's 25.9 seconds in the stop. And if it is a couple of seconds longer, from what Ewan was telling me, that meant that they are the ones to change tyres. But we'll have to find out. We'll see what their pace is on the opening lap or so, because it will potentially be even up to 5 seconds slower, just due to those cold tyres, like we saw in the first laps in qualifying. So, of course, these drivers, you're not really going to see the effect, but when further drivers come out and you see the hot and cold tyres on the same part of the track at the same time, that is when we will find out. So Marone takes the lead as Alfie Price comes in just one lap after the leader, exactly on 30 minutes. So it seems like cutting the race in half is what everyone's doing today. There was no real early stoppers, but a few drivers, I'm sure, are going to stay out a little bit longer.
Yeah, and it's interesting, I think, to see that Marone, who was in P3, is going the longest. Of course, Alfie Price, who was P2, in the middle. And then, of course, our original race leader, I should say, Ben Ford, coming in first. It was almost the reverse of the order in terms of the pitting order. Alfie Price's pit stop time, I think he's going to be hoping to get it about 22.5 if he wants to try and come out in the lead. If it's anything more than that's going to be very tricky indeed. When does he move? It's not going to be enough. And he's actually going to have a slower pit stop time than Ben Ford, quite significantly, and he's still there. 29 seconds. That's a huge pit stop in the end.
So Ben Ford can save fuel and go faster than everyone. Although I haven't said that, we're side by side on pit exit because of the slow outlap on the cold tyres. Up the hill we go, and Ben Ford is going to have to hold on to this. He had a much shorter pit stop, but was actually, in the end, on the same part of the track because of the tyre situation. But then we're going to see it in reverse as Alfie Price is going to have to keep on with his cold tyres. But seemingly Ben Ford not fully up to speed with just a one lap difference so far. And if Price can hold on to the back, this might actually work out. But I assume with the longer pit stop, he's got a decent amount more fuel in as well. So we're seeing Ben Ford run it a lot tighter on the fuel number.
Keep an eye on Ethan Marone in all of this, because of course he's gone round another lap here. I don't think he's even coming on this passing of the pit lane. He's got a 50-second lead, and if he can have a relatively short pit stop with these guys struggling to warm their tyres, he could be the one, yes, with cold tyres when he comes out of the pit lane, but he could be the one to end up leading the race after the pit stop cycle. Of course, with the asterisk of we're expecting a couple of these guys with their temperatures, tyres up to temperatures up to tyre, to make their way through and back into the race lead. But this is a really intriguing part of the race now. Sharuta's in the pit lane, or Ethan Marone may be in the pit lane, mind you. He's just not appearing is in the pit lane on the tower. In fact, no, he definitely has stayed out. So that's 3 laps of an overcut that he's got on Ben Ford at least.
Yeah, I was thinking about the pit numbers. It also could be to do the amount of fuel that they started the race with as well, because if you start with a full tank, then obviously you have to stop for less. So I wonder if Ben Ford had a little bit more fuel at the start, whereas Alfie Price just cut the race in half and cut the fuel tank in half therefore as well. Very interesting if that is the case, as Ben Ford here is trying to get past the number 9. This is for position overall in the LMDHs. Oh, it's up the inside. Price goes, oh, contact is made. That was a way too aggressive move, and from second place in the pro category, he is going to be out of contention as he tried to get around the number 9 of Wayne Basson, but that is way too aggressive, and unfortunately the meatball flag is out for him.
Yeah, and he's you know, no pun intended, going to pay the price for that incident, and he's going to be completely out of this race in terms of contention. Ethan Marone, all of a sudden, might not just even find himself in the lead, but only with one car to fight him. He still may lose out to Ben Ford here, but he'll stop on his marks and wait to be serviced in the pit lane with about a 28-second lead, so it's going to be quite tight. Here's the incident again for Price. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if he's thought that the gap was going to open for him into the corner, but it never did, and bouncing over the curb, rear end goes. We've seen that one before.
I mean, there just simply was not space for a car to go there, and I appreciate the race situation, and I'm sure Basson is going to slow down a little bit to basically let him through, but even then, yeah, you do not go side by side at the inner loop, I'm afraid, and that is going to be a big shame, because that was going to be an awesome fight, wasn't it, between the two of them. Price trying to slide his way through, contact being made, and Basson, he does save it, I think, in the end. Yes, he did, so he was able to continue on and basically, you know, do a bit further in the race. Is that the 46 of Sikorsky, who's managed to get himself back out on the track? In the end, actually earlier, I didn't actually notice he only lost a lap with the damage on his car, so he is there a lap down, 6th place in class, so he is still going to get some points today, which is going to be very big for his championship fight.
Yeah, and I mean, how far is he off the back of Cheverton here? Because I don't think he's actually a million miles away. In fact, no, that is Cheverton directly in front of him. If for overall position, that would be P5 for him in class. So he's not far off of that. Yes, it's a very long way to go up from there. You know, it would be some, you know, minute and a half, really. But P5, after crashing from the lead off the start and completely destroying the car, would not be a bad result for Franek Sikorsky. And complete damage limitation. There is the 27 after contact. I'm not too sure who that was going off the road, but clearly Adam Grevison.
Yeah, certainly. That was a battle for position as well. So that was P5 and 6 in the Lmdh AM category, as we see the number 20 Gualio from the lead come in. So here's Grevson. He's doing well. Oh, it's already a mistake. That's so unlucky. It was already the mistake from Hobbs. Grevson trying to do his best to get around the outside, but nothing really he could do. I mean, he's all on his own, and it's the mistake from the car ahead that is going to take him out. I mean, everyone in his position would have gone to the left in that exact same situation, but Hobbs jumped all the way from the right-hand side to the left of the track, and no space for the 54.
No, and in the end, disappointment. And more contact on the exit of the bus stop. That's been the real hotbed, as it always is here at Watkins Glen. The real hotbed for contact. Nick Scott's gone through up into P2 after the pit stop cycle is shaking itself out in that Lmdh AM class. But can Sikorsky get to P5? That's the question for him. Bit of a lock up there as he makes his way out of the carousel on towards the boot. But Max Everton holding on for the time being. Again, this battle is really just between these two. They're a long way behind anybody in front, and the car behind them's out of the race, so kind of for the back of the field. However, still a couple of points that they're going to be tussling over.
And a point is a point. It's certainly important in a short championship like this. 6 races. This is the 3rd race already. After this, half the season gone. And the opportunities, of course, dwindle as the season progresses. So anything that you can do is certainly going to be quite good. And if you can just, you know, hand yourself a couple of points after a difficult race, you'll certainly take that. As it looks like the car in front of Sikorsky, that is Cheverton, as you were saying, is going to be coming down pit road as we get to 22 minutes. So there's still a few, especially the LMP3s out there, because their tank goes a bit longer. So they are still out there on the track as the battle reignites between Maltrek and Nick Scott. This is still for 2nd place in class. Just 0.4 of a second separates them. They've got, unfortunately, quite a bit of time, 5 seconds to Munro up ahead and 14 to Gualio behind, who they've dropped. So it's just a 2-way battle now for 2nd place.
Yeah, and it means that they can now really focus in on each other and what each other is doing in this race, and gives them a clear thought process of how to go about this battle, how to go about trying to claim what would be an absolutely fantastic result for them. come the end of this one. At the start of the race, of course, a lot of drivers that you're going to be fighting with, and a lot of drivers that feel like they're in contention. But by the time you get to this stage, and after the pit stops particularly, you know how you get into the end. You know your fuel numbers if you're worried about them, and you know which drivers you're fighting for directly, and you can really refine how you go about those fights. So really interesting to see. That's the battle we've just seen in the LMP3 AM class. Lucky Story's in second. They're a minute off the leader, but all three of the cars in shot there fighting over this P2.
Yes, and I'm just trying to check. So yeah, of course, Jenna up ahead still needs to stop. So do these guys. So the AM category is actually a little bit all over the place in terms of the pit stops for the LMP3 guys. So I'll wait for that to sort of sort itself out in, you know, maybe another 5 laps time, and then we'll look with about 10 or 5 or 10 laps remaining to see what exactly is going to happen in this race, because it seems to be, especially the LMP3 AMs, the time gaps are pretty crazy, not just obviously here, but ahead and behind as well. So I think Story is going to have the eventual lead once Jenna comes in pit lane, but again, that is going to work itself out because these guys pit a lot earlier in the race.
They did indeed, and how that will impact him will really shake itself out in the next 5-10 minutes or so, particularly in this battle. And I think again it's going to be quite clear who's in the battle for the win once Jacob Jenner comes into the pit lane, once we kind of see that offset work itself out. But still, Jenner continues on, quite an opening stint, 40 minutes it'll be at least for him, and to go 2/3 into the race means that it's going to be pretty nice on the fuel tank to have to fill up for only 20 minutes rather than for just over half an hour like we saw for the likes of Ben Ford. But mentioning Ben Ford, I'd also like to point out he still did have a very short pit lane time, and yes, he may be able to save that fuel, but is there at all a possibility that he's underfueled the car? You know, you doubt it, but I feel like we have to consider it, considering how short the pit time was compared to the others.
Yes, so he actually, now that everyone else has stopped, he actually has had the shortest pit stop of anyone in the Lmdh category, but he was one of the first ones to pit. So that is a very interesting situation, as you're saying, and if he is able to hold on and get this lead, I think that just shows you why he's going to be leading this championship, as a lot of the LMP3s come down now. So yeah, you're right, about 40 minutes or so it seemingly is the way for these guys. So we've got Barford, Walker, Jenner all down pit road as they work their way back out onto the track. We'll have to see exactly how they will stack up in terms of the battles. I'm trying to obviously work out exactly who that is coming up the hill. It was actually that might be actually Sikorsky, a lap down, trying to work his way back up, but these guys they've been fighting on the track for position, but now Barford is going to let Sikorsky through and get his lap back.
Yeah, and all of a sudden Sikorsky showing the pace that he, and I think would say that he really did show in qualifying, and probably would have showed had he not made that mistake on the opening lap. He's now within a lap of the race leader, and after the contact that he had on the opening lap and having to tow back to pit lane and losing all that time, really impressive to see him be on that lead lap, despite the fact that yes, he's going to be pretty much contained to P5, but just shows that without the mistake he really had some good pace tonight, and at least should give him confidence going into the final 3 rounds that he does have pace to be winning most of these, if not all of these races in the championship. He just has to try and eradicate those mistakes, and he'll be able to really be fighting for that championship in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, and the good thing is the drop down as well. So I'm sure this is going to basically be his one. In terms of, as you say, he's probably going to be fighting for the wins in all the other races. So this is going to be the race he's able to forget when we get to the end of the season. The top 5 results count. So that is going to be actually a little bit of a factor to think about by the time we get to the 5th race of the season. Because if you've already had 5 good races by that point, then you're probably looking good and you know your points number, whereas you know, even if you mess up in the last one, whereas if you've had a bad race, you're always catching up even to that final race of the championship. Here's Bosworth and Story continuing their battle on as they work their way down towards the hill, but not quite enough for the 29 to make that move.
No, and can't quite get it done just yet, but wide we see. And is there an hour chance for the 29 to come through into the final couple of corners? You doubt it, because it's tricky to find a way through there, but we've seen moves lined up through the final couple of corners and then executed at turn 1. Can this be yet another example of that? Doesn't seem like the 29's got enough speed off of the corner for Jenson Bosworth to claim P2 here, but just keeping the pressure on is going to be worrying enough for Mikey Story that I think Story's going to have to start looking in the wing mirrors, and the continuing pressure is going to enable Bosworth to really feel like he has a good idea of how to make this move, even if it takes him the rest of the 70 minutes in this race.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it doesn't matter when he makes the move, as long as it's done. By the time they get to the checkered flag, he gets the run, although he was slightly offline again. These guys, obviously, roles reversed at some points in the race, but it looks like yeah, they're not trying to have side-by-side battles. So Bosworth a lot slower actually there through the inner loop through the bus stop, as Story gains some time at that part of the track. These guys do have, I think it's Andrew Maddle just up ahead of them, another one of the LMP3s, and then of course the blue car as well, which is Ash Hill, but he's a couple of laps down. To the outside Bosworth goes. So these guys, they really ebb and flow with what part of the track one is faster than the other.
It does, and it's really intriguing, really, to see how this battle does ebb and flow, and the places where we are seeing Story come under a bit more pressure, and where Bosworth is actually trying to make a couple of these moves. Again, though, Story goes wide. Bosworth with a much tighter line. It's going to keep the P2 man guessing in towards a corner like turn number 9, and it is meaning that Bosworth is trying different things, getting into the wing mirrors, and almost making Mikey Story double guess himself. The good thing for Story is at the moment he's gaining away and using his pace at parts of the track where it means that he can keep in front. So you can see here, now built up just over half of a second on towards this main straight, which is going to enable him to stay ahead, you'd think, down at the bus stop without a mistake through turn number 1. But he's losing a bit of time into the carousel, into the heel as well. But it doesn't really matter, because it's difficult to make a move at that part of the circuit. And in all of this, Cav buds on the back of Jenson Bosworth. So Bosworth isn't now able to just attack, he has to defend as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's now a three-way battle for second place. The blue car of Ash Hill is getting out of the way, but the other three cars, which all seemingly have red in their livery, very popular colour between those three drivers as they work their way through the inner loop. But as you say, Bud is now on the back, and they do have, they got quite a lot, 26 seconds up ahead, and they've got over a minute behind. So it really is just this three-way battle for the final couple of places on the podium. So 2 of them will get on the podium, 1 of them will miss out. And hopefully for Jenna, he's able to stay ahead, but he is 26 seconds up the road, so that should be absolutely fine. Ryan Walker jumped up into second place in the pro class as well.
Yeah, he's looking strong to maybe pick up or keep that P2 right towards the end of this race. 10 seconds behind Ethan Barford, but 12 seconds ahead of Pedro Silva. Looking pretty good for him to probably stay where he is. Pedro Silva having to come into the pit lane isn't helping him in that regard either. He is stopping with only 14 minutes to go, which won't be the longest pit stop. There you go, 13 seconds in the end. Just a bit of a top up on the fuel, but we are seeing that from a couple of the LMP3s now, just getting a top up on the fuel towards the end of this race. So
he's done 45 minutes on that tank, and we've got a 75% tank, which means he's just done an hour on fuel. That's pretty good going there. I know the LMP3s can go a lot further than the P2s and GTPs, but still that's a very good drive. Saving that fuel, he's going to have a very short pit stop time, and he's going to be able to come back on as Bosworth gets the run, goes to the outside, gets overlapped already as we work our way up towards the back straight, and once again he's almost too close. He's to the left-hand side. No side draft either, too far away. So Story might be able to just about hold on to this one, which he does. So Bosworth needs to slightly position his car better to be able to get a proper run there as we come up onto the back straight. But this time around he has to sit and wait, and once again they just lose a little bit of time there through the outer loop. So definitely better and worse corners, as I was mentioning earlier. He's lost a bit of time here, but last time I said that, he then gained all the time coming towards the toe here. So definitely maybe a couple of mistakes still out there on track, but don't forget Cav Bud, who we're on board with now.
Yeah, he's looking to try and get himself into the top 2. Oh, is this the chance now? Mikey Story having to defend in towards the heel. Is there a chance as he works his way around the outside? No, not in the end for Jensen Bosworth. We'll have to sit and wait, and Cav Bud may even have a go here. Quick mention on Pedro Silva. My timing page is saying that was his second stop of the race. And I don't remember him stopping at the start. So he must have either not fueled the tank up enough or decided early he was going to stop twice, but it's an interesting strategy regardless. He's now down in P3 and quite a ways off of getting into the top 2 with Andrew Mattel right behind him now.
Yeah, that would make sense as to why he went that long. So he must be one of the drivers who pit on the in the first couple of laps as well. Also looking at that track position now. So yeah, we must have missed that one. And some of the GTPs go through, and this is Ben Ford trying to work his way through his Bassin in the number 9 car just up ahead of him. So we've got the white machine, then the sort of chrome car of Ben Ford as he works his way up. Bassin almost defending actually a little bit from him as they come up to the back straight. Hopefully no more collisions, reintroducing himself into this race. And his car going off there. Which car was that? Was that Bassin? Maybe Ash Hill gets black flag. Don't think it's him being involved, but one of the GTPs, I think it was actually Bassin there, who went off the track, and Ben Ford has worked his way through that little bit of traffic. Marone in second place is now only 5.5 seconds back as Ford lost some time working through that sort of 5-car training that he just had to do.
It's not really something you want to have to do, is it, to have to battle your way through traffic? But in a race like this, you really have to make it a key part of your strategy and how you're going to go about this kind of race. Ash Hill, whoa, that's a bit of contact. How has Ash Hill held that? I don't quite know. Incredible that Ash Hill's still going, quite frankly, in the number 19, because that was a scary place to make a tap. We've seen it go wrong for 2 cars, or, well, for a moment of contact, both cars involved in that contact going around a few laps ago. There, somehow, we just kept it going.
And the worst part of that was the 14 of Marone, second place. So that was a big risk once again from some Lmdh traffic as Bosworth works his way to the outside there, getting through some traffic. Still stuck behind Story, trying to make that stick. Unfortunately, Bud gets close, but up the inside Bosworth's going to be, and that is not always the place you make the move, but it looks like he's going to have it done because he'll continue to have the inside line as we get up towards the back straight. Story there jumps down into second place. He moves out the way for Marone as well, and that in turn blocks Story. Can Story come back around the outside? It's so difficult to do so when you're fighting in class. It takes a lot more speed in towards the inner loop with the outside line, but not enough to get the move initially down the inside of the outer loop. Looks, but doesn't complete the move.
And Jensen Bosworth will just about hang on to that P2. I think it's going to be key for him to try and build up that gap immediately. If he's still under pressure by the time he gets back to the bus stop next time by, it's going to be very difficult to see how he's going to be able to keep it calm throughout the remaining 10 minutes in this race, particularly with Mikey Story and Cav Bud right there and ready to pounce if there is any kind of mistake. But this is by far the tightest train of 3 that we had, particularly for a podium place, and up and down the field. And it's in the slowest of the 4 classes, which is still great to see how these guys are battling it out. Wide again from Mikey Story. He's loving taking that tarmac around the outside at the moment, isn't he?
Certainly is. And as we get to 9 minutes to go, just a few laps still coming in this race, about 5 laps or so left as Camdra gets black flagged. Are we going to see a pit stop there? That's an awkward pit lane entry as well, as that is that Story coming down pit lane? Yes, it is. He was on 23 lap stint, so unfortunately he had to pit earlier in the race and therefore he did not have enough fuel, so that takes him out of contention. And we are going to see Cav Bud there have an open door onto the podium with Story dropping down.
Yeah, now Story completely out of contention unless there is another having to splash or dash for the other 2, which is unfortunate for him. 8.8 seconds, that is one of the splashiest of splashes and dashes that I think we'll see in this race. But it goes to show that there is maybe a risk of a couple of drivers under-fueling the cars in their initial pit stops. Cameron Judd, it's not been a good day for him, is he? He's been black flagged now.
Oof. That is into the wall there for Nick Scott, who's dropped down to 4th place. This car was leading in class at one point, then held on to 2nd place for a long time. But it looks like Nick Scott is not even going to get onto the podium as he's 7 seconds off. And he's now got Grevson up behind. So that blue Ferrari is coming and hunting him down as we come onto the back straight. Hewlett gets the meatball. So many, that little bar at the top has been active so many times during this race. Grevson gets close to Nick Scott, but not enough to make the move.
No, and he's still tracking him at the moment, just not quite enough to get this one done just yet. Oh, gets close in towards the carousel, though. I thought for a second that Grevson was going to stick a nose down the inside. There's a quick flashing of the lights as well, but Nick Scott holds on for the time being. Only a handful of laps are left, mind you. Of course, Ben Ford lapping at, a decent rate of about 1 minute 33. So you'd say just over 6 minutes will be 4 laps. So we should have 5 to go when he next crosses the line. But yeah, it means that there's not too much time for these battles to come to a conclusion. And for Scott, I think he's going to have to start having to work out how he defends in the final few laps, because the attacks from behind are going to become increasingly more desperate.
And that was a little bit too defensive there from Scott. He, of course, held that into the corner, but then did not have the exit that he would have wanted. Now Grevson is even closer as we work in towards the final couple of corners of the lap. 6.5 minutes to go, and Grevson is so close there. Once again, Scott runs a little bit wide as the 54 is trying to get the run. It looks like he's almost purposefully staying back here, trying to get the run. I think he could have stayed closer in towards turn 1. Scott once again slow off the corner. And 54, he gained a lot of time here on the previous lap, and now this might be the move. Up the hill we come for the Ferrari, trying to make this stick, and this will be a great move for him if he can do so, because he'll be into 4th place in class. He's a little bit further back though, so that Porsche is very good on the top end. This is what we saw earlier actually in that battle, where Nick Scott is very good on the top end speed, but not so off the corners in those first couple, and Grevson's always pushing him as he comes down the hill.
Yeah, it gets very close, isn't it? As they now run their way in towards the left-hander. Once again, outside line for Grevson. Difficult to hook it around the outside there, and he won't be able to do it this time by. Nick Scott will hold firm for the time being, at least in towards the toe they go. And again, you can't really make a move through there. We've seen it all day long. Throughout the 55 minutes of the race so far, drivers have not been able to use that corner as an overtaking spot. We have seen inside line moves, though, down at the heel. Bit of a send. Oh, there's contact. Cut her around. That was always coming.
Certainly was. He was trying to squeeze his way through. Nick Scott was then squeezing some more, and in the end, front to rear contact, and the rear goes around for Nick Scott. So at least on the road for now. Grevson has that 4th place. Let's see a replay. So there is a car's width there. He's very far behind though, isn't he? He dives a little bit on the brakes, and yeah, I mean, he's way later on the brakes. There is a lot more room to his right-hand side. There's a tiny bit of the move in the braking zone. That'll be an interesting one for the stewards. I'm not sure exactly if that does get protested, how they would call that one. A very interesting one, because Nick Scott has been under the eye of the stewards quite a bit. He's had a few penalties this season, but Grevson may be on the receiving end of that one. We'll have to see what they decide. But for now, he is continuing on the track and trying to hold on to that position, because Hobbs in the 27 is now coming after him.
He is indeed. And Hobbs is now the one who may start to put a little bit of pressure into the final couple of laps, and to get a place that he may not have expected himself to be able to achieve. P4, I don't think we've talked about him in the top 5 much, if not at all, in this race so far. And with a P4 possibly on the cards, this is a great chance for him to get himself some really good points for his championship challenge and for his championship tally as well, but not got many laps to get it done inside. So we await to see how he can do in the closing couple of laps, but it really is only a closing couple of laps. Time really has vanished in this second stint, hasn't it?
It certainly has. The second stint is a lot shorter for quite a few of these drivers, but just 3.5 minutes to go, so a couple of laps till we get towards the end of this race. All of the leaders, at least, are pretty comfortable. We got 7, 5, 12 and 31 seconds. The gaps between first and seconds in the 4 classes, but there are some tight battles in behind. As we've been mentioning, this is the halfway point of the season, and these couple of points could vary your finishing position in the championship, as this is where, this is the part of the season where you just have to stockpile the points when you can get them. And of course, this might be a free move for Hobbs, depending on what the stewards think of that incident with Grevson. Not necessarily saying he was the one at fault, because there was a bit of a move in the brake by Scott, but you never know, as he was the car behind. We could be looking at some further points for the 27 later on, with just under 3 minutes remaining in the race now.
Yeah, not a long time, is it, before we will see the checkered flag fly and for these battles to come to an end. But there is still a chance. Oh no, Sikorsky gets a meatball flag right at the start of the race, right at the end of the race. He's had a meatball flag at both ends of the spectrum. He'll have to come down pit lane and maybe rescind that top 5 spot in the end to match Everton, who could come through in the not too distant future. But unfortunate for him, but I think losing one position will not be his biggest worry from tonight. I think that'll be, of course, the moment that he had on lap 1, which is what put him down there in the first place.
Indeed, it was a bit of a snowball situation, as of course he just loses another place. The only good thing for him is, I believe there's 7. Is it 7? Yeah, I think it's 8 people in class, so he is still going to get points whatever happens. But of course he's going to be losing a few potential ones there. Compared to what he could have got should he have stayed on the track. He was in the lead, remember, as you're saying. He had the lead, and he sort of did it himself, coming in towards the inner loop on that first lap, as we're seeing a little bit of a move up ahead. Actually, no, that's just on some LMP3 traffic from Grevson as he works his way through, still trying to hold on from Hobbs with just under a minute and a half. So the white flag will be coming out, actually, as Ben Ford is back. Oh, huge crash in the meantime. As I was looking at the timing screen, Hobbs goes around, LMP3 involved, and he's on his roof with a minute to go.
Yeah, it's not just around, is it? That is, well, and the meatball, I mean, the meatball flag's out, but I thought that's relatively obvious, considering that he's on his roof and he can't move. Was like, like an animal, a turtle on its back, quite frankly. But he's into the pit lane. Disappointing for him in the final couple of minutes, but we'll have to see it again as he runs through turn 2 and 3, gets into the grass. There he goes, contact with the car, and that's what puts him on his roof, and then he's bouncing his way down the track. Incredible, really.
Yeah, just misjudged that, went on the grass, and as soon as he touched that, really just losing the rear end, couldn't do anything about that. From that initial look, I don't think the LMP3 did anything wrong. I think just a little bit of a misjudgment from Hobbs. Let's see this from his onboard. Yeah, I mean, he uses that space just... Yeah, it's very unlucky. An inch or 2 to the right, and he would have been fine, but he just got the wheel over the edge of the curb onto the grass. And that was enough to bring it around, and a dramatic end to the race at Watkins Glen here. We come back to Ben Ford in that #1 machine, #1 on track, and he's going to be taking another victory in this championship. He struggled last time out at Algarve for various reasons, but now he is going to be taking the victory. It's going to be by about 6 seconds or so from Marone, who maybe even have a penalty looming over his head. So it's a very dominant victory here from the BMW. And Ben Ford around the final corner takes his second victory of the season here at Watkins Glen, round number 3 of the Abruzzi Prototype Challenge Championship, and it'll be in dominant fashion as well. And of course, all of the other leaders of the 3 categories will be following through. It's been a very dominant win for basically all of the championships, all of the classes, I should say, with Luca Munro coming through 5 seconds in the lead in the AM category.
And really impressive for Luca. Of course, made that move in the early stages around the outsides through the bus stop chicane, and hasn't really looked back since. Maltrek got through eventually on Nick Scott, but he hasn't able to catch up all the way through the race, and 5 seconds is a very comfortable margin to have after an hour's worth of racing.
Indeed, Luca Munro also taking his second victory in the season, the same as Ben Ford, winning rounds 1 and 3. Maltrek will only be 5 seconds back, as of course these two are going for the championship. Maltrek led by 2 points coming into today. As we look at Jenna, your winner in the LMP3 AM category, over 30 seconds in the end. That is quite something, and also being third overall in the LMP3s. Good pace from him, an absolute dominant fashion in the 99. And then we come to the LMP3 Pro category. Ethan Barford, he's been promoted from the AMs to the Pros for this round. His name tag still says as such, but he is in the Pros, and he's going to be taking victory after Sikorsky crashed twice, and Barford takes full advantage, leading pretty much all the way and taking victory in the end by 10 seconds. It'll be from Ryan Walker in that 26. So Barford brings himself back into the championship hunt after losing a lot of points last time out in the Algarve.
Really impressive from him, and we barely talked about him over the course of that race because he was so dominant at the front of the field. So full credit to Ethan Barford and to, of course, to Jacob Glen as well on those LMP3 classes, because dominant wins really for them. Almost got more dominant as you work your way down the order. If only the top two gaps were spun around in the Lmdh categories, but 10 seconds, 33 seconds, really impressive stuff. And for Ethan Barford, great step in the right direction.
Yeah, this championship is certainly opening up. Let's see how we ended in our different classes. Ben Ford winning from Marone and Zaruta, who got on the podium with Solovay, Price and Coffin having slightly more difficult days. Solovay not having the pace that he had in the Algarve, and Price and Coffin obviously struggling quite a bit. In your category for the LMDHs, Luca Munro taking another victory this season. Mautrek in second place and Gualio in the end getting third after some issues with Grevson and Scott. They might be dropping down. We'll have to see what the stewards think. And then drivers a lap down, Basson and Hobbs, who ended the race on his roof in seventh place. Zonta, Spooner and Simpkin, your top 10 in that category. Marone actually getting the fastest lap there as well for the LMDHs. In your LMP3, so Barford took victory with Ryan Walker, the only cars on the lead lap due to the lapping of the LMDHs. Then Silver is in third, Maddell, Cheverton, Sikorsky and Newton. Pretty much the bottom 5 cars there all having various issues in the race, and that is what caused them to be there. So a very attritional one here today for the LMP3 Pro category. And then in the AMS, we've got Jenna, Bosworth, Budd, Story, Hewlett, Hill, Fremont and Judd. And once again, the bottom few drivers there all having various issues, as we will now try and get a word, at least from the winner in these categories. And first, let's bring in Ben Ford, who, after a bit of a struggle last time out, I'm sure is going to be very happy indeed. Ben, once again, starting off the race at the front. And as the race progressed on, it seemed to get a little bit easier with some drivers falling out the wayside behind you.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think the whole race wasn't too difficult, to be honest. The tyre wear, I was mainly worried about the tyre wear, because obviously doing Watkins in the last week, pretty much every series, I knew the tyre was going to be bad, so I was just focused on that. And the car behind, I don't think he was any quicker than me. I think he was just burning through the tyres, and also traffic really didn't help me in that first stint. But other than that, it was pretty calm. And then obviously he made a desperate move into bus stop, which helped me out massively, gave me a big gap to do whatever I wanted. So I'm pretty happy, yeah, especially after last week. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit of a turnaround. And actually, that was going to be my next question about the traffic. It seemed like there was a few places where it got very awkward indeed. Fortunately, you had a bit of a gap at points to maybe not go full speed into that. But how was it around here? It's always a very, flowing track. It's very medium speed, even for the LMP3. So it's quite difficult at times, I guess.
I think the problem is when you do IMSA, for example, you have the GT3s, and that's in the GT3s, you can go around the outside of every corner on the track, whereas with the LMP3s they have enough downforce compared to what the GTPs, where you just can't do anything. So you have to wait until either to get them on the brakes or get them on the straight. And some especially the last sector, it's impossible to get by because you get such good exits out of all the corners. It's just impossible. You have to wait until the corner before, the straight before bus stop. So it's just annoying, but it is what it is. Same for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously looking towards the next half of the season, we go to Suzuka next. Is that a track that you like next week?
Well, we were there last season and I won that by about 20 seconds. So I hope I can do the same.
Yeah, certainly that would be very good. But so once again, congratulations on your second win this season. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. And then we will bring in, of course, Luca Munro, who, after struggling a little bit in the Algarve, is coming back with a vengeance and takes his second victory of the season. And Luca, first of all, I have to just mention that overtake around the outside going to bus stop. Once again, you're proving like your overtakes are probably some of the best out there on the track this season.
Am I muted? No, you can hear me. Good. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I literally had tunnel vision, and I was like, I'm getting past Nick Scott, regardless of the consequences. And thankfully, Nick backed out I hope I wasn't bullying, but yeah, oh man, I didn't realise until the last lap that I was leading. I was just happy to be ahead of Christian. And oh man, I nearly burst a blood vessel in surprise when I looked and saw that I was in first place, and I was like, no, bring it home, and then celebrate. So yeah, I'm absolutely like, I really struggled last week. I had such chronic understeer in the first part of the race, really put me out of position in qualifying. I had the wrong setup, so if that's the worst I get this season, then I'll be okay with that. I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't basically talking myself down a bit after that race. It's like, well, look, Christy and Adam, they're way too quick. I was lucky to be, win the first race. I don't think that's going to be a common occurrence, but winning again, delighted.
Absolutely, and it's turning into a really close championship battle between you and Christian. Of course, he led you by a couple of points in the championship coming into this round, but now you're going to swing that back in your favour by a couple of points. So it's seemingly very close. What do you think your chances are now that we're halfway through the season? What do you think you can do with the battle with him in the final 3 races?
Well, I won't lie to you. If the prizes for the winning the championship in all 3 classes were exactly the same as last year, I don't know if I probably would have gone for LMP3 just for fun. But the fact that you guys are offering 10 iRacing credits, every little helps and all that. But honestly, I think a realistic expectation for me would be to at least finish 3rd. That's my aim. If anything greater than that, it's fine. It's because I have a teammate who raced last season in this series, Sarah Dove, and she'd been wanting a pair of Abruzzi gloves, and I know I have to finish at least 3rd to get that for her, because I've already got my gloves. I've been racing with them today. They never leave my hands. So I would like to think I can still win it, but I'm not going to assume. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. It's just top 3 is an aim. Anything more is a bonus.
Absolutely. I love the attitude that you're coming into this season with. It's very refreshing. So, yeah, good job on getting another race victory, and I'm sure we'll speak to you again before the end of the season. Well done.
Yeah, my aim is to be able to get into the broadcast booth again and have another conversation, Cameron.
Yeah, perfect. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, hopefully. See you later. And then we will bring in, for the LMP3s, we got Ethan Barford, who, of course, moved up from the AMs into the pros. And Ethan, certainly a very strong race from you. How was it? I guess it didn't really actually change too much going from the AMs to the pros, because you're always up towards the front. But how was that race, your first one in the pro category?
It was really intense. I had Ryan right behind me pretty much the entire time, really pushing me on. So I had to make sure that my pace was, as fast as I could go the entire race, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, what was your view, actually? We'll go back to the first lap of the race. What was your viewpoint like coming through the bus stop and seeing your fierce rival Sikorsky facing the wrong way and off into the grass?
Oh, terrifying. I really had to put the brakes on and hope no one hit the back of my car, because I had no idea where he was going to go, because the back of his car hit the wall, and it was just a guessing game. And I'm really fortunate to have gotten through that corner and actually made a gap on everyone else behind.
Absolutely. It brings you easily back into this championship fight. You've both had one bad race now, let's say. So what do you think you can do in this second half of the season? Do you think you can beat him, fair and square on pace after the fierce battles you've had already?
On pace? Honestly, maybe not. He really shows strong pace at all 3 tracks so far. The round 2 and round 3 here, I didn't really have an answer to. So it's very fortunate for me personally, and all the other pros, what happened, to be brutally honest. Really don't know about the next 3 rounds. I can't say they're my strongest tracks. I did well at Silverstone and Suzuka. Well, Silverstone especially last season. So I get that. That's really what I'm banking on, really.
And next we move to Suzuka, which is actually quite a narrow track for the lapping and the overtaking, with the prototypes coming around you. So how do you think the traffic's going to be there between these 2 categories?
I feel like through the S's, it'll be tough, because they'll definitely want to get around us pretty quick, because they'll end up losing quite a lot of time. But it's going to be quite dangerous, especially after the S's, with all of the fast, very fast dangerous corners. So it's more, I think it's going to be quite similar to this race, where it's really picking where you are on track and just almost getting lucky is half of it.
Yep, so it's going to be a tricky one. So yeah, happy practicing, and then yeah, maybe we'll speak to you next week as well. Well done.
Thank you so much. I hope so too.
Yeah, good luck. And we bring in now Jacob Jenner, of course, from the LMP3 AM category. In the end, winning by a good 30 seconds or so in his military green livery there. Jacob, just how was that race in your number 99?
It was definitely a different one. There was a little bit of a battle at the start with I think it was Cav Bud, made the move at the bus stop, and then from there, didn't really see many people in my class.
Yeah, I was going to say that you got your sort of you got Walker, you got Silver all around you, some of the pro drivers. Does that really make too much of a difference in terms of how you attack the race? Do you really care about the pro drivers being in and around you at points?
I mean, I think it was Ryan ahead of me, Ryan ahead of me for most of the race. So I was just trying to keep up into his slipstream, use that to my advantage. But I know that if one of the pros is behind me and they want to get past, it's not something I need to defend. It's not something that's going to affect my points. So I'm not too stressed about the pace around me with them. I was more looking always to the gap to the first AM car behind me.
Yeah, absolutely. And what did you feel with the traffic and the prototypes coming past here? It seemed like it was a little bit sketchy in a few corners here.
Yeah, there was a couple of times the Lmdh has decided that sticking a nose in at the bus stop might be a smart choice, but with the lead I had, I kind of thought the best case is I would just back out, not take the risk, lose a couple of seconds, but overall worked out in the end.
And of course, you came into this race third place in the championship. You did well beating Story and Bosworth, who were ahead of you, so you're going to be right in it championship wise. 3 rounds to go. What do you think you can do?
I mean, you always got to look at trying to win, don't you, really? But I think, I'll be happy with anything in the top 3, but always looking at P1.
Yes, certainly. It was a good race for you today, and I'm sure we'll speak to you again before the end of the season. So yeah, good luck in the final 3 races.
Thank you very much.
And there we go. That wraps up the interview of the winners for today's round 3 here at Watkins Glen for the Abruzzi Prototype Challenge Championship by Motorsport UK Esports. It's been a great evening of racing, an hour's action with LMDHs and LMP3s, and we ended up with our 4 class winners who all sort of tied up some championship iterations that we'll see coming in towards the final 3 races. That starts with Suzuka next week as the championship starts to look towards the end. We got Suzuka, Imola and Silverstone over the next 4 weeks to wrap up this championship, and the championships are getting close indeed, especially in that LMP3 AM category. That's just going to be a couple of points between them, and in the pros as well. In the LMDHs though, Ben Ford taking strides up towards the front as we see pictures of him leading from the front here at Watkins Glen. It's been myself, Cam, Roger, Darethak alongside me, and Hugo Louise on the production of this RaceSpotTV broadcast, and we will see you next week for another round of action.
As well. What a move for the 48. Oh, look at this. And onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from the number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.